In the shadow of the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, where the wind whispered secrets through the pines, lived Elias Thorne, a man the locals called the Mountain Man. His beard was as wild as the wilderness he called home, and his hands bore the scars of a life spent wrestling with nature's unforgiving grip. Elias had long ago traded the bustle of civilization for solitude, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of chopping wood and tending to his modest cabin. But on this crisp autumn day in 2025, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, Elias descended from his perch for a rare trip to the valley town of Evergreen. Little did he know, this journey would unearth a forgotten chapter of his past and ignite a spark of humanity that had lain dormant for decades. Evergreen was alive with celebration. Banners fluttered from lampposts, and the air hummed with laughter as townsfolk gathered for the wedding of the year. At the heart of it all was Amelia Hartwell, the beautiful bride, radiant in her ivory gown, her eyes sparkling like the mountain streams. She was the daughter of the town's beloved mayor, a woman whose grace and poise had won hearts far beyond the valley. As Elias trudged through the crowded square, his worn boots kicking up dust, he felt like a relic from another era, out of place amid the jaw. He had come only to stock up on supplies, intending to slip away unnoticed. But fate, at sly architect, had other plans. As the wedding procession began, a sudden gust of wind ripped through the square, scattering petals and toppling the archway adorned with flowers. Chaos erupted. The bride's veil caught on a splintered beam, and Amelia stumbled, her dress tearing against the debris. Guests gasped, frozen in shock, but Elias, with the instincts honed by years of survival, sprang forward without a thought. His strong arms lifted the fallen arch, steadying it just long enough for others to pull Amelia free. She looked up at him, her face a mix of gratitude and surprise, and in that moment, her eyes widened with recognition. "Do you recognize me, Mountain Man?" she said softly, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a gentle brook. "I was your childhood neighbor." Elias froze, his heart pounding like thunder in his chest. The words transported him back 40 years, to a dusty farm on the outskirts of a smaller Evergreen. He had been a boy then, orphaned young and taken in by his gruff uncle, who scraped by on meager harvests. Next door lived the Hartwells, a family teetering on the edge of ruin after a fire claimed their barn and livestock. Little Amelia, barely 8, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, would wave to him from her porch. Elias, at 12, had seen their desperation, the father's weary shoulders, the mother's quiet tears, the children's hungry eyes. One winter, when blizzards buried the valley in snow, the Hartwells' food stores ran dry. Elias's uncle grumbled about their own slim rations, but the boy couldn't bear it. Night after night, Elias sneaked out, sharing what little they had, loaves of bread, jars of preserved fruit, even his own woolen blanket. He fixed their leaky roof in secret, shoveled paths to their door, and once, when Amelia fell ill with fever, he trudged miles through the storm to fetch the town doctor, carrying her bundled form on his back. The Hartwells never knew their guardian angel's identity. Elias had sworn the doctor to silence, fearing his uncle's wrath. It was an act of pure, selfless kindness, born from a boy's simple belief that neighbors were family in disguise. But life twisted like a mountain trail. Elias' uncle passed, leaving him the farm, but death swallowed it whole. He retreated to the peaks, building his cabin with calloused hands, vowing never to entangle himself in others' lives again. The Hartwells, buoyed by anonymous aid, rebuilt and prospered. Amelia's father rose to mayor, and she grew into a woman of influence, advocating for the forgotten in the valleys. Elias had watched from afar, a silent sentinel, content in his isolation. Now, standing amid the wedding guests, Amelia's words unlocked a floodgate of memories. "It was you," she whispered, tears glistening. "All those years, the food, the warmth. You said thus, Elias. Why did you hide?" He shifted uncomfortably, his voice rough like gravel. "Bastante notin, especial. Used doing what folks ought to." But as he spoke, an unexpected turn unfolded. Amelia's fiancé, a sharp-suited businessman from the city, approached with a frown. "The arch is ruined," he muttered. "And the caterer's truck broke down on the pass, storms coming. This wedding's a disaster." The crowd murmured in dismay. Amelia's face crumpled. This day, meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, teetered on collapse. Elias glanced at the darkening sky, then at the bride who had once been that wide-eyed girl. A profound realization dawned. His solitude had been a shield, but humanity's true power lay in connection, in extending a hand when the world turned cold. Without the word, Elias rolled up his sleeves. "I got a smokehouse up the mountain, full of venison and preserves. And my old truck can haul that arch back together." The guest stared, but Amelia nodded, her eyes pleading. Elias rallied a few sturdy townsfolk, and they set off. Oars blurred as he led them through winding paths, sharing stories of the land that bound them all. At his cabin, they loaded supplies, food he'd hunted and gathered with care, enough to feed the village. Back in the square, as twilight fell, Elias rebuilt the arch with steady hands, weaving in wildflowers from the hills. The feast he provided was simple yet bountiful: roasted meats, fresh bread, and pies from mountain berries. Guests marveled at the flavors, born from the earth's generosity. But the true climax came as the ceremony resumed under the stars. Amelia, bail-mended, turned to Elias before exchanging vows. "You've given more than food today," she said, her voice breaking. "You've reminded us all that kindness isn't a debt, it's the thread that weaves us together." In that moment, Elias felt a transformative warmth. His act of compassion, echoing his childhood selflessness, didn't just save a wedding, it healed his own fractured soul. The isolation that had defined him melted away, revealing the power of humanity's quiet heroes, the ones who give without expecting, who lift others in their darkest hours. As the couple kissed and cheers erupted, Elias slipped to the edges, but Amelia caught his arm. "Stay," she urged. "Your family." For the first time in years, he smiled, truly smiled, feeling the weight of loneliness lift like morning mist. In the days that followed, Evergreen buzzed with tales of the mountain man who became a legend not for his reclusiveness, but for his heart. Elias began descending more often, sharing his knowledge of the land, teaching children about survival and stewardship. Amelia's advocacy group flourished, inspired by his example, extending aid to remote families across the Rockies. And so, in a world that often feels divided by peaks and valleys, remember this: a single act of kindness can bridge the widest chasms. It reminds us that we are all neighbors, bound by the unbreakable power of humanity. No matter how isolated we feel, recognition comes not from grand gestures, but from the quiet compassion that echoes through time. In the end, it's the selflessness we sow that blooms into hope, inspiring us to climb our own mountains and lift one another along the way.